watercolors. Today we have a watercolor painting tutorial for y'all. In front of me I have a quarter sheet of Stonehenge aqua, and what I like to do is pre-wet the paper right before I turn on the camera so the surface is already saturated. You're probably able to see the sheen if I move it in this fashion. You probably see a little bit of water move on top of it. Kind of like extreme wet and wet to start off with. With this one, I want to do a soft sky, soft background, then a more sharp foreground to contrast against it. So it's something you'll have seen me do in the past, and it's fun. It's good to have a few different things in your bag of tricks, a few different things you like to play around with. So this is a raw sienna, so I'm just going to feed that in, and I'm going to go pretty strong with it this time. We'll put a light source in this region. I'm going to have water, so I'm just going to do above, below with the same color. Things that I put in the sky or in the horizon, I'm not going to directly mimic in the water itself, but I want those ideas there. Let's grab some alizarin. We'll have fun. That's a color that softens quite a bit. I want things to be wet. I want it to flow. I don't really want to see too much brush stroke in the sky. That's part of the reason I use so much water with this technique, is that it just lets things diffuse and flow. Just like I said, colors that are above mimic it below, but not perfect mimic. Let's see what else. We could take the Venetian red or light red oxide and play with that in spots, but we want to keep the pigment flowing. Okay, now I'm going to do a wash off, which I barely ever do. Let me wipe this out. Let's get light wash of ultramarine. I want him to flow around as well. Okay, I'm going to mix this ultramarine with either Venetian red or light red oxide. This is going to give me a purple. This is going to be for the far distant horizon. It doesn't even have to be a far distant horizon. It could just be trees and fog or something like that. You could put in little shapes. Vary the height. what's happening right here is I think we're too wet on the brush and we're pushing stuff out. So that's why. Makes a little bit stronger concentration. Ultramarine Blue in and of itself in that background, I always feel like it's a hit or miss for me. It's something you may want to personally experiment with if you want to see Ultramarine Blue pop through, or if you want a more thorough mixture. What I'm doing is going back over with a stronger concentration. To add a little bit of variety. In fact, we could add another landmass that's a little bit closer. Bring that up. The illusion of trees. We could even grab Payne's Gray or probably an Umber or a Sienna and put that in as well. You're getting quite colorful with this region. Now, I'm going to want an extreme foreground. So for that, I could add burnt sienna to this mix. And I'm going to tone it down with ultramarine. I've been finding that for ground masses, I'm not too fond of pure burnt sienna or pure raw sienna. So I'll kind of tone it down with that ultramarine, like I had said. But I want this in quite a big concentration. I'm splattering paint like accidentally, but it just adds character to it. There's a gentleman that I've been seeing post recently that I think a lot of people are familiar with. I believe his name's Herman Peckel. And I think he might have some videos. I want to look and check out his style because he has a very loose but crisp, lots of depth, beautiful watercolor style. So I'm just feeding in pigment into this area as much as I can. I'm going to have foreground trees come up. I don't want to overwhelm the background with the foreground trees, but I will have maybe one come up in this region and one come up on the other side. We'll see. But regardless, the reason I'm mentioning the trees, I want to do a wet and wet where they're going to sit to give them their shadows, and then I'll come back over on top and once it dries and do a little bit more exact. I think the color combination in the sky and the softness, and it'll soften as we dry. Right now it's just giving the illusion of heat, like just a hot summer day, a hot summer sunset or a hot summer sunrise, which is really, really cool. One thing I can do, and I haven't done this in a while, so I'll do it for this one for y'all, is with trees, if we're going to have foliage on it, I like to kind of dry off my hake, and in the wet and wet stage, put a more concentrated pigment. I live stream this. Somebody just came into the live chat and said hello. So, hey, how's it going? Just saying hello back. So what I do here is with this wet and wet, and we have pigment there, I'm going to take a very strong concentration. This is straight from the tube of raw sienna, and I'm going to plan out the foliage path. And then when I do a dry off and then put the tree in more detail, this will give that soft glow of the light shining through the tree, and it'll give some contrast and depth to the tree itself. So you can do this with raw sienna. I find that it works with burnt sienna well, also with the Venetian red or the light red oxide. So any one of those earth tones, and then you could experiment with other things. I mean, try it out with sap green, try it out with lemon yellow and see what happens. Or maybe even a lemon yellow Payne's gray mix for that dark green, and see how that affects it, if that gets a glow to it. So this is going to be, like I said, foliage. We could have this right here. We don't have anything really stopping the eye on this point, so I could have another tree structure come up, or a few thin ones. Not too sure. Here is Venetian red being fed into this, and I want it to soften. And like I said, that's for the glow of the sun through this foliage. I'm not going to fill up the whole inside. I'm going to kind of go more towards the dark on the inside center mass of this tree. I could put a little tree out in this region. There's no pre-drawing for this one. This is just, last night I had done a gouache sketch of a portrait by Boldini, and that was about an hour's worth of work. And after that, it was like midnight, and it was just a little too burnt out from other experiments to go further. So when I was laying in bed, I was thinking, I need to do a soft background watercolor for everybody. I haven't done one of those in a little while. Now, we'll probably have some sort of, let's have something that comes off the edge right here. I just compositionally feel like there needs to be something in this region. This is 11 by 15 quarter sheet, and remember, I always harp on painting to the edges, even if the mat will cover it. Kind of helps create that world, that image. Okay, now I'm going to do a dry off, and with this dry off I have excessive water in the top corners, so I need to watch out for that, or I'm going to get that weird edge effect. Also, I can't keep it too close, my blow dryer, because it'll push some pigments around. So you want to have it at a higher height, and you want to be prepared for those. So if you have earbuds on, just watch your ears, okay? Now, I'm not sure how well it shows up in the camera, but you'll see in our regions where we use the ultramarine, which has a granulating effect, we have very beautiful examples of granulation taking place. So keep an eye out for that effect, and if that's something that you enjoy, you can use that, get that whenever you mix ultramarine with the other colors. There's also medium that you can buy that's just an additive that you could add into, I think, the water itself that you're using for watercolors, and that will help give you granulation effects. So I'm going to put in some trunk structures. And then we're going to come back and put foliage on top of that. I also use the edge of this is the rigger brush, the number 4, to kind of help ground it a little bit more. That's a pretty bad crossover right here. It's happening at the same level as the horizon line, and we're getting that X shape. So you want to be wary of stuff like that. I could actually see if I could lift it out. Yep, I can. So see how things line up with background features. So this is just initial trunks putting in. Let's switch to our hake. And we can mix ultramarine into this. I do have sap green on the palette. I'm not sure if we'll use that. Ultramarine and lemon yellow will give you a green. Gives you kind of a weird green, so you want to tone it down with the burnt umber or burnt sienna. And this is for the more center growths. I'm going to use the smaller rigger to create more branches and effects. I'm also going to put in the growth that's going to take place around the bottom of these trees. We want to make it look less like we just planted those trees in place. I'll grab burnt umber, Payne's Gray for dark. So hopefully you're starting to see the layering effect that I'm trying to get with the tree foliage, where initially we did the wet and wet with the earth tones, and then now I'm coming back over with a darker tonality where it have more mass and less sunlight is passing through. Okay, let me grab the rigger. And with this, you can play around all day with branches and where things are going to pop out. But what I'm thinking is I'm going to put another layer of trees potentially in front of these to create even more depth. So we're going for a soft background and then a layer of trees in front. I think he's going to have a part that pops up. We'll put a little bit of foliage up in there. So we use a hake that's on the dry side with pigment on the end of it in order to stipple in these textures. Feeding it a little bit more dark tonality. Okay. Now I'm going to do a dry off. That should be good enough now. You can stop at this point. You can continue tickling and playing around with it at this point. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pour out on a separate container. And I think this must be the one I used. I could have sworn I had one with it already there. There it is. So separate container. Buy these little guys at like Asian markets for like $1. And I'm going to use some black gouache. Black gouache I'm going to use to get the intensity of it and to layer what I'm working with here. Now I could continue mixing my watercolors to do that, but this is just where I'm at with gouache and whatnot. So I'm going to use this to bring a closer tree element. See how I want this guy to be formed. I'm not going to paint directly over the branches that are already there. The lighter branches and trunks from the previous one and then this darkness over it creates an illusion of depth in that spot alone. You can use that concept within branches where you could have, if we just had that background tree where we just came over it and went darker, darker, lighter, lighter in both directions, but worked on that same tree, we would then create an illusion depth within that tree itself. But the reason I'm kind of doing a new tree right here to create this a little bit more depth is that the spacing of the trees felt a little too contrived. And I can use the hake. I can stipple in the dark, closer foliage. then think with that one shifted so far over, I can have a closer one to the edge in this region, and that'll break up that contrived 1, 2, 3 that we had. And this creates an opening right here. We got a light source right there. And we then start creating different compositional space. And it's totally plausible that this could have been like, okay, I'm at the local arboretum or at a state park, and this is something that they had put in place and trees that they had planted along that edge in a relatively human designed fashion. But I'm trying to avoid that feel. So think about your placement of objects and how they would be in nature. Think about how you move things around, because you might want that. A great example is Central Park, something like that, where you have rows of trees on either side, you have rows of lampposts, street lamps, etc. And they're all just go back into the paper, they're all the same height and all that. But if you drive down a road that's hilly, you'll see that the street lights seem to go up and down as you look down. They do recede, but there's that up and down shape. And that's kind of a more organic feel than just perfect perspective lines pushing those back into the page. So just things for you guys to think about and look for when you're out and about and out driving. But be careful if you're out driving. I don't want you to be like, I took your advice to look at lampposts and I got into an accident. Or I got pulled over because I was going slow staring at people's houses. We could further explore whitewash. We have done that in some videos where we can mix the whitewash with a watercolor, or you could just get gouache colors. But if you mix it with a watercolor, you create something called a body color. And if I was to put lemon yellow on top of this object, it wouldn't really show up that well. But if I mix it with gouache, it helps it sit on top of there. I could also cover some areas with white gouache and then paint on top of that. And you get different looks, different feels. It's all a matter of personal preference. But in order to get to that place of personal preference, you need to experiment. And that's one of the goals of this channel. I try to come up with different experiments. I try to come up with different scenarios for us to discuss. A lot of our experiments have been going towards different mediums for portrait painting, glazing and oil paints. I want to do something with India ink, like an underdrawing, and then glazing or washing in watercolor on top of that and seeing how that affects it. And maybe not even just like passing smooth glazes over a India ink background. Maybe it's going to be a pure painting like this and seeing how the darks of the underpainting of the India ink affect it. That's probably what direction we'll go in. But the point is to experiment, to have fun, etc. By the way, I haven't given my pitch for this video yet. Hey, if you enjoy this channel and you enjoy this content, I have down below a link to my Patreon account. I would love for you to consider supporting me. I have two simple tiers. One's like $3, the other one's $5. And proceeds help this channel go, and they also help with art supplies. The more expensive tier, the $5 one, has more exclusive videos for patrons. So I would love for you guys to consider supporting. If you don't want to or are incapable of, I totally understand. I would love for you to like, subscribe, follow, and to comment down below. I try to answer all the comments. And if there's ever anything you have questions about, anything you want me to address, any ideas that you have, let me know and I'll do my best to address it, or maybe even paint the subject matter. Can't promise it would come out good, but I enjoy hearing from you all. So this is just plain the black wash, just adding little grass elements, textured effects. Actually, you know what we'll do? While we have this stuff out, let's grab this right here. Is Buff Titan, a watercolor. I put these whites, like a white wash or the black wash, on separate palettes because it very easily corrupts the paint on the other palette. It'll spread and it gives a chalky effect. What I'm going to do is take this, get a good coat of it, and right here I'm going to paint in a dead fallen tree branch. This is something, an element that I've added in other paintings. This paint, I'm not sure if it's called Buff Titan or Titanium Buff. This brand is the Van Gogh brand, so it was super cheap. It was good. It was like, let's say $3 or $4 for a tube, and I haven't gone through a tube yet. It's good for these fun little accents. Daniel Smith has a Buff Titan. That's why I'm not too sure about the name, because the two companies call it different things. It's like the illusion of just broken down branch. Then I can grab my black and go down along here and be like, here's the shadow that it's casting. I could even take the black, feed it along the edge. That might not be the best way to do it. Let's get a burnt umber. Trying to pick up enough pigment. Feed it along to give a little bit of shape and contour to this guy. Let me stand up, take a look, see where we're all at. Just trying to add contour here, and then we'll be done. We'll call it at that. You could always put somebody here Oh man, should I do that? Yeah, let's put somebody in that spot. So we're gonna kind of draw them in with pigment. We're looking from the back side, shoulders, come down. Waist. Legs. Neck. Head. A little bit Payne's gray. Variety. We're going to have to put his shadow in. Light source from there. Shadow's going to come out. We could have him fishing or anything. But what we're going to have him do is we're going to have him hunting. I'm going to grab just that black wash for his shadow, just to make it easy for me to put that in. And at this point, we could probably grab a little raw sienna, little highlights. We do a dry off, and I'm going to put that shadow in. Let's go. All right. Oh, hey. We have somebody else that's in the live chat. A bear. They said, hello, beautiful painting. Oh, thank you. This is just kind of on the fly. I film on Twitch, and then I download it and upload it onto YouTube. The concept of this one was to put in a soft sky and then demonstrate, and it was wet and wet. And then showing the wet and wet stage how I could do a concentrated earth tones in these regions for the glow of a tree. And then a dry off painting on top of that to kind of add more depth to it. And then switching to a black wash for another layer of trees. And it was kind of talking about, since it was on the fly, I went 1, 2, 3 with the trees, which was too contrived. It looked like the edge of a state park or something like that. So I dropped the tree line a little bit closer and put another tree line in with gouache. And what that did was take the lighter tone and the darker tone, lighter tones, darker tones, and create more depth in those areas. I was able to change it to 1, 2, 3, so it's not that repeated pattern. Demonstrate a little bit of white gouache to show how you can do that dead tree effect. And then right there was just a perfect spot for a hunter or somebody fishing and whatnot. So let me do a dry off. I'm going to sign it. I'm going to put a mat over it just so you all can see what it looks like. Then I'll be back later on today with more painting. I'm not sure if we're going to do more watercolor or not. I have some oil paintings that I want to demonstrate glazes on and experiment with. I also haven't done a landscape drawing in a while. What do I want to sign with? I'll just sign right here with the black. Can't really see the signature, but we know it's there. Let me do a dry off and yeah. All right, so we look dry. I wonder how long this video is. This is probably on the 40-minute side from start to finish. Also, those of you on the Twitch, I would love for you guys to like, subscribe, follow, check things out. And I think I have a link for my YouTube where I have tons of videos. Since they let work out on March 13th, I'm a school teacher. They, I think I've done over 110 videos. Oh God. Well, I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll talk to you all soon. Have a great day.